Mark stands right at the head of the heavy mahogany table. He is incredibly loud. He is completely confident. He uses these grand sweeping hand gestures to make his point, and Mark actually has absolutely no idea what he is talking about. But nobody in the room seems to care. The executives are captivated by his sheer energy. They nod, they smile, they buy into the noise. In the exact same room, sitting quietly in the corner, is Sarah. Sarah has the actual data. She spent 3 weeks building a meticulous strategy that could literally save this company millions of dollars. But she is quiet. She waits politely for a natural gap in the conversation to share her brilliant insight. But in a world that never stops talking, that gap never comes. So her idea stays locked inside her notebook, and the company happily follows Mark right off a cliff. This happens every single day. We see it in schools, we see it in corporate offices, we see it in our own families. We instinctively follow the loudest voice in the room, even when that voice is entirely wrong. This is not an accident. It is a massive systemic flaw in how society measures human value. We have built a giant, shiny altar to a concept called the Extrovert Ideal. It is the deeply wired belief that the ultimate human being is gregarious, is an alpha, loves the spotlight, and always prefers bold action to careful thought. We are taught from the very first day of kindergarten that being quiet is a problem. We are told to speak up, to be aggressive, to put ourselves out there. But being an introvert is not a medical condition. It is not a character flaw you need to fix. It is a biological operating system. And right now, we are forcing millions of people to run on a cultural software that was never built for them. To understand how we fell into this trap, we have to look back. In the 19th century, we lived in what historians call a culture of character. Back then, the ideal person was serious, disciplined, and honorable. What truly mattered was how you behaved when no one was watching. You did not have to be a fast-talking entertainer to be respected in your community. You just had to be a solid, honest human being. Abraham Lincoln did not need to shout to command a room. His quiet conviction did the heavy lifting. So what broke? We moved to the city. At the turn of the 20th century, society shifted violently from agriculture to industry. People left their small, tight-knit towns. They left the places where everyone knew their family history and their quiet reputation. They packed their bags and moved into giant, noisy cities filled with absolute strangers. Suddenly, your deep character did not matter as much because nobody had the time to get to know you. You had to prove your worth in the first 5 minutes of a conversation. You had to make a spectacular first impression just to survive the crowded streets and the competitive factories. Right at that chaotic historical moment, a poor farm boy from Missouri stepped into the spotlight. His name was Dale Carnegie. You know the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But Dale started out as a skinny, anxious kid who was completely terrified of public speaking. He looked at this new, hyper-competitive world and realized the rules had changed. Success was no longer about being the most honorable person. It was about being the best salesman, and the very first product you have to sell is yourself. Carnegie transformed himself. He became a public speaking icon, and America eagerly followed him into the culture of personality. The vocabulary of greatness changed overnight. We stopped praising people for being modest or principled. The new corporate buzzwords became magnetic, fascinating, and dominant. We started making a fatal error. We started confusing being a good talker with being a good thinker. We built a culture that believes if someone speaks quickly, they must be highly intelligent. And if someone speaks slowly, if they actually pause to weigh their words, we automatically assume they are insecure or slow. Think about the psychological damage this inflicts on a quiet child today. The school desks are no longer arranged in neat, quiet rows. They are pushed together into noisy, collaborative pods. You are forced into loud group work for every single project. If a child wants to read a book alone under a tree during recess, the teachers panic. They pull the parents aside and say the child needs a serious intervention to come out of their shell. But introverts do not have a shell. They are not hiding. They are observing. They are absorbing massive amounts of data. When an extrovert walks into a loud networking event, Their brain receives a massive, thrilling hit of dopamine. They literally feed on the noise, the flashing lights, the overlapping, superficial conversations. It gives them a physical surge of energy. But an introvert's brain is biologically wired differently. It is highly sensitive to external stimulation. That exact same loud room does not energize them. It completely overwhelms their nervous system. It is like trying to drink water from a blasting fire hose. So they shut down. They retreat. Not out of weakness, not out of fear, but out of absolute biological necessity. They desperately need to lower the volume of the outside world so they can actually hear their own thoughts. They need pure quiet to process the complex internal worlds they are constantly building. Yet, society demands they wear a heavy mask. You wear this extrovert mask to the office every single day. You pretend to love the noisy brainstorming sessions. You force yourself to be bubbly, to act just like Mark, and by the time you drive home, you are completely empty. You have absolutely nothing left for your family or for yourself. You sit in a dark room staring at the wall thinking, what is wrong with me? Why is everyone else fine while I am falling apart? There is nothing wrong with you. You are fighting a brutal war against your own biology. And the profound tragedy is, by forcing introverts to act like extroverts, society is throwing away their greatest power. We are losing the deep, sustained focus required to solve massive, complicated problems. We are trading profound wisdom for empty, confident noise. Look at the financial crisis. We had rooms full of loud, hyper-aggressive, risk-taking traders shouting over each other, completely ignoring the quiet, analytical risk managers who were desperately pointing at the data, saying the math did not work. The loud voices won the argument, and the entire global economy crashed. Because when the loud, impulsive decisions inevitably crash and burn, we are going to desperately need the quiet ones. We are going to need the people who have been carefully observing, analyzing, and figuring out exactly how to fix the catastrophic mess that the loud voices left behind. And yet, knowing this, knowing that deep thought is absolutely essential for our survival, modern corporate culture still worships the concept of constant, unavoidable collaboration. We call it the new groupthink. It is the absurd, almost religious belief that extreme creativity and ultimate productivity come only from a bizarrely specific place, a completely open plan office. Walk into any modern tech startup or major advertising agency today. What do you actually see? There are no walls, there are no doors, there is absolutely nowhere to hide. You are sitting at a giant wooden table with 50 other people, wearing heavy noise-canceling headphones, desperately trying to block out the guy eating potato chips next to you, and the impromptu marketing meeting happening right behind your chair. We are told this constant, chaotic friction sparks genius. We are told that brainstorming out loud, throwing messy ideas against the wall, is the ultimate engine of human innovation. But the hard science says the exact opposite. Psychologists have studied the concept of brainstorming for decades. They take intelligent people, put them in groups, ask them to shout out ideas, and then they compare those ideas to the ones generated by the exact same number of people working completely alone. And every single time, without fail, the individuals working alone produce more ideas and significantly better, more complex ideas than the loud group. Why does this happen? Because in a group setting, something incredibly dangerous and deeply natural occurs. The loudest person, the most charismatic, aggressive person, takes over the room. The rest of the group unconsciously mimics their opinions just to fit in, or out of a primal fear of looking stupid in front of the tribe. The quiet person with the actual breakthrough idea just stops talking. They watch the bad idea win simply because it was presented with extreme confidence. If you want to see the ultimate, undeniable proof of this, look at one of the most famous, revolutionary companies on earth, Apple. We always picture Steve Jobs, the ultimate charismatic extrovert, pacing the stage, changing the world with his magnetic, theatrical presentations. But Steve Jobs did not invent the first Apple computer. Steve Wozniak did. Wozniak was a classic, deeply introverted engineer. And he did not build the personal computer in a loud, trendy brainstorming pod surrounded by whiteboards and cheering colleagues. He built it entirely alone. He worked at Hewlett Packard at the time, and he would wake up at 6 in the morning, go to his quiet, isolated cubicle, read highly technical engineering manuals, and tinker in total, absolute silence. Wozniak himself later gave an incredibly powerful piece of advice to young, creative people. He said, "Work alone, not on a committee, not on a team." He fundamentally understood that true, world-changing innovation requires a level of deep, uninterrupted focus that is physically impossible to achieve in an open-plan office. But this does not mean introverts cannot lead. In fact, this is the biggest, most toxic myth of the extrovert ideal. It is the false assumption that leadership requires a massive, hungry ego and a booming, dominant voice. We automatically assume the best leaders are the ones who command the room through sheer force of personality. But history tells a completely different, much more compelling story. Think about the people who have genuinely shifted the moral axis of the world. Think about Rosa Parks. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on that bus in Montgomery, she did not stand up and scream at the bus driver. She did not deliver a fiery, aggressive speech to the other passengers to rally them to her cause. She simply said one word: no. Her quiet, unshakable conviction sparked the entire civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr., the brilliant, extroverted orator, became the loud voice of the movement. But Rosa Parks, the quiet, deeply introverted seamstress, provided the absolute moral anchor. Or think about Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was painfully, physically shy. He was terrified of public speaking. As a young lawyer, he literally froze in court. He had a severe panic attack and had to hand his first case to someone else because he could not force the words out of his mouth. But Gandhi did not try to fix his quietness by taking an aggressive sales course like Dale Carnegie. He did not force himself to become a booming alpha male. He leaned entirely into his true nature. He realized that his power was not in his volume, but in his absolute quiet determination. He called his method satyagraha, which translates to soul force or firmness in truth. He brought the massive, heavily armed British Empire to its knees, not by shouting, not by dominating, but by holding his ground in total, peaceful silence. Quiet leadership is a fundamentally different kind of power. An extroverted leader is often driven by the immediate reward of the spotlight. They want the applause. They crave the recognition. And there is nothing inherently wrong with that. It can drive massive ambition. But an introverted leader is usually driven by something much deeper and much more sustainable. They step up to lead not because they want to be the boss, but because they care deeply about the specific cause, or the innovative idea, or the well-being of the team. And this makes them incredibly effective at managing highly proactive, intelligent people. Studies show that extroverted leaders often clash with employees who have their own brilliant ideas. The extrovert unconsciously wants to maintain their dominance, so they talk over their team, or they shoot down new proposals just to assert control and remind everyone who is in charge. But an introverted leader, they do the exact opposite. They are completely comfortable stepping out of the spotlight. They actually want to hear what you have to say. They listen carefully, they process the complex information, and then they let their brilliant team run with the idea. They lead not by dominating the room, but by cultivating and protecting the talent inside of it. So why are we still so obsessed with the loud alpha leader? Why are we secretly terrified of the quiet thinker? Because silence is intimidating. In a culture that literally never shuts up, silence feels like a direct threat. When someone is constantly talking, you know exactly what they are thinking. They are laying all their cards on the table, even if the cards are weak. But when someone is just sitting there, observing, watching, not saying a single word, it makes the extroverted world deeply uncomfortable. People assume the quiet person is judging them or hiding a secret agenda, or that they are just fundamentally weird. This brings us to the hardest, most painful part of the introvert experience. The constant, grinding feeling of being misunderstood by the people you love. If you are quiet, you spend your entire life having your core motives questioned. Are you mad at me? Are you sad? Why aren't you having fun like everyone else? You really need to smile more. You hear these invasive phrases so many times, they start to corrode your basic self-worth. You start to internalize the toxic idea that your natural state of being is a flaw that ruins the mood for everyone else around you. To survive this constant judgment, you learn to adapt. You learn to perform a character. You become what psychologists call a pseudo-extrovert. You learn the right jokes, you force yourself to make intense eye contact, you artificially raise the pitch of your voice to sound more bubbly and energetic. You become an absolute master of small talk. Even though every single conversation about the weather feels like rough sandpaper on your soul. You learn how to work a room while secretly calculating exactly how many minutes are left until you can politely escape. And you are remarkably good at it. You really are. You get the promotion at work, you make the wide circle of friends, you survive the agonizing 3-hour networking dinner, but the cost, the hidden psychological toll is absolute devastation. When you spend 8 hours a day violating your own biological nature, your nervous system eventually crashes. You experience a profound, bone-deep exhaustion that sleep simply cannot fix, because you are not just physically tired, you are spiritually depleted. You are burning massive amounts of cognitive energy, just maintaining the fragile illusion that you are someone else entirely. You start to lose track of who you actually are when nobody is looking. You start to fear your own quiet moments, because that is when the crushing exhaustion hits you the hardest. And the terrifying truth is, you cannot sustain a fake personality forever. Eventually, the heavy mask cracks. Eventually, your brain refuses to cooperate, and you hit a wall of severe burnout so hard, it can take years to recover your authentic self. The key to surviving this is not to throw away the mask entirely. We all have to perform sometimes to navigate the complicated real world, to pay our bills, and to support our families. The true key is to understand exactly how much energy that mask costs you and to build structural, non-negotiable systems into your life to buy that vital energy back. You need to strategically design your days around what the researchers call restorative niches. These are specific physical places or strictly protected moments in time where you can completely drop the extrovert act, lower the volume of the chaotic world, and just let your frayed nervous system finally breathe. It could be a locked bathroom stall at work where you just close your eyes for 5 minutes. It could be the silent car ride home with the radio completely turned off. It could be waking up an hour before the rest of your house just to drink coffee and stare at the dark sky. But finding and defending these crucial niches is incredibly difficult when society constantly demands that you call Gemini, be on 24 hours a day. Because let's be honest, we live in a culture that treats socializing as the default setting for a healthy human being. If you aren't out there networking or grabbing drinks after work or constantly engaging in the group chat, people start to wonder. They start to wonder if you're depressed or if you've just given up. But the truth is much more fascinating. There is a concept in psychology called free trait theory. It was developed by a brilliant researcher named Brian Little, and it basically explains why you, the quiet person, are actually capable of being the life of the party when you really need to be. It suggests that we are born with certain fixed traits, like introversion, but we have the ability to act out of character in the service of what Little calls core personal projects. This means if you care deeply about your work, or you love your family, or you're passionate about a specific cause, you can summon the energy to be the most charismatic, extroverted person in the room. You can stand on a stage and deliver a powerful speech. You can lead a massive team. You can do it all, but, and this is the part the world ignores, you cannot do it forever. There is a biological price to pay for acting against your nature. Once the project is done, once the speech is over, you don't just go back to normal. You have to go into a recovery period. You have to find that restorative niche we talked about, or your system will literally start to shut down. And this isn't just all in your head, it's in your nervous system. Research into high sensitivity shows that about 20% of the population, most of whom are introverts, are biologically wired to process information more deeply than everyone else. Scientists call them orchid children. Most people are dandelions. They can survive and bloom in almost any environment, no matter how loud or chaotic it is. But orchids? Orchids are different. If they are in a stressful, noisy, or toxic environment, they wilt quickly. They suffer. But if you put an orchid in the right environment with the right level of quiet and support, they don't just grow, they bloom more spectacularly than any dandelion ever could. They see the patterns others miss, they feel the emotions others ignore. They are the poets, the visionaries, and the deep thinkers who give the world its soul. But how do we navigate this in our personal lives? Think about your relationships for a second. We've all seen this dynamic, the classic introvert-extrovert couple. At first, they are perfect for each other. The extrovert loves the introvert's calm, steady presence. The introvert is fascinated by the extrovert's energy and social ease. It's like a puzzle fitting together. But then, real life happens. Friday night rolls around. The extrovert has had a long, stressful week, and their brain is screaming for a party. They want music, they want people, they want to blow off steam. But the introvert has also had a long, stressful week, and their brain is screaming for a book, a blanket, and absolute silence. This is where the conflict turns into a tragedy of misunderstanding. The extrovert feels rejected. They think, if you loved me, you'd want to be with me and my friends. The introvert feels attacked. They think, if you cared about me, you'd stop trying to drag me into a loud, exhausting room. They are literally speaking two different biological languages. The extrovert is looking for stimulation to recharge. The introvert is looking for the absence of stimulation to survive. If we want to fix our schools, our workplaces, and our marriages, we have to stop treating introversion as a second-class trait. We need a quiet revolution. We need to realize that the person who doesn't speak first in the meeting might actually have the answer we've all been looking for. We need to stop designing our offices like cafeterias and start designing them like libraries. We need to give our children the permission to be quiet, to be solitary, and to be deeply thoughtful without making them feel like they are failing a social test they never signed up for. The world is only getting louder. The notifications are constant. The hustle culture is screaming at you to do more, talk more, and be more magnetic. But the greatest power you have is the one they can't hear. Your ability to sit alone in a room and think a single, deep thought through to its conclusion is a superpower in a world of 10-second distractions. Your ability to listen, to truly, deeply listen, is a rare and beautiful gift in a world where everyone is just waiting for their turn to speak. So if you are the person who feels overwhelmed by the noise, if you are the one who constantly feels like you're failing at being an extrovert, stop. Just stop. Take off the mask. It's too heavy, and you've been wearing it for way too long. You don't need to be more like Mark. The world already has enough Marks. What the world is desperately missing is the quiet, steady, analytical strength that only you can provide. Your silence isn't a void, it's a reservoir. It's where the best parts of you live. We are standing at a crossroads. We can continue to let the loudest voices drive us toward impulsive, shallow decisions, or we can finally start listening to the whispers. We can build a society that values the soul force of the quiet ones. Because, at the end of the day, the most world-changing ideas didn't start with a shout. They started in a quiet room with a single person who wasn't afraid to sit in the silence and wait for the truth to emerge. And if this perspective, this quiet way of looking at the world, resonates with you, it might be worth sticking around for more of these deep dives. We're building a community here for the thinkers. Now, go find your restorative niche. You've earned it. The world will still be there when you get back, and it'll still be just as loud. But you? You'll finally know that you don't have to join the noise to change the world. You just have to be quiet. And honestly, that is more than enough.